All right, we're back at the hangar working on Project Camaro. We just got the fuel tank and the related components, ascending unit, fuel pump, etc. in. This tank's actually from Holley to go along with the Sniper electronic fuel injection system we're going to be putting in. As you can see, it's a really nice tank. It's been powder coated, and it's made specifically by Holley to go with their fuel injection unit, so it seemed like the way to go. So that's going to be one of today's projects, is to get this installed. We'll keep you updated as we move along. First thing we're going to be working on is the sending unit, and this is a universal unit from Holley. So the instructions here are not the clearest in my opinion. So let me show you what we've done. So since this is a universal fit, it comes with this bracket that allows you to lower the rheostat, which sends a signal to the fuel gauge, considerably for tank depth. Well, our tank depth doesn't need all that. So the first thing they have you do is remove this bracket and discard it, and then reattach the rheostat to the single slide assembly. And the next thing they want you to do is measure tank depth. So in our case, we've got the mounting point for the sending unit and the pump are lower than the actual tank depth. So putting a straight edge across the top of the tank height there, I came up with 7 7/8 inches. All right, then the instructions tell you to add an 1/8 inch for the gasket assembly. So 7 7/8 plus the 1/8 inch is 8 inches. And now what the instructions say is slide the pivot point for the rheostat to half the tank depth plus an 1/8 inch. So we take 8 inches, cut it half at 4, and we're going to measure from the top of the sending unit down to the pivot point for the rheostat and set that at 4 inches. Then they want you to mark on the bracket where the bottom of the rheostat is, remove the bracket again and cut the remaining off so that the rheostat's the lowest point. And then another thing that they want you to do is they want you to adjust the float arm so that it's an 1/8 inch below the top of the mounting point. Now, the thing is, depending on where you have this rheostat, that 1/8 inch can be a lot of places. But looking carefully, you'll see in the instructions that they show the arm bottomed out on the stop of the assembly. So put the arm on the bottom of the stop of the assembly to indicate full gas. Put a straight edge across the top like I've done there. Pick up your 1/8 inch, and that is going to set your float in the right spot, and then they're going to have you cut off the excess float material. So that's what the instructions are having you do. I had to read them a couple of times to get through that, but we figured it out. So we're going to get on with the sending unit installation in our tank. All right, so once everything's been cut to the appropriate lengths, you're going to end up with something that looks like this, at least on first gen Camaro's Firebirds. And then the unit needs to be put into the tank, which the instructions don't say anything about, but this tank is internally baffled, and there's a baffle right here. And we want our float drop to go along this line due to the fact that the tank is not square. So when we measured for center on the tank, it was measured at the wide portion up at the top, so we want our float drop to fall along that line. So we're going to orient the the sending unit with the float along this line, since that way is not an option. So that's next. All right, so we've completed the sending unit installation in the tank. The next thing is we're going to assemble the pump, which is an in-tank pump, as you can see. So that's what we're going to be working on next, and I'll take you through that process. All right, so here's the in-tank fuel pump from Holley, completely assembled. The instructions on this, they're a little vague really, or they were to me. At the end of the day, they've got you measuring things again, but at the end of the day, your height from here to the bottom of your sock needs to be slightly less than the depth of your tank. So just measure from the base of the sending unit to the bottom of the sock, and then cut the return and supply lines appropriately. the return line here is just dumping out towards the bottom of the pump, and that'll save you some measuring, and this is what it's supposed to look like. Also, when you assemble this, orient the connector for the electric so that it's not hanging outside, otherwise it won't, it's not going to fit through the hole. I wasn't looking at that the first time, so I had to rotate that back around. So anyway, that's what you should end up with. All right, here's the assembled tank with the in-tank sending unit, of course, and the in-tank pump. One other thing of note, if you're buying one of these for yourself, Holley does not include any of the fittings you need to come immediately off the tank, which was a surprise. You'd think they'd give you a fitting there, so I had to order those. They've got them on their website. Another thing is they include this little vent cap, which I presume they want it vented off of this line here. So and this one, I guess. So I'll install it. I doubt it needs it since the caps were vented on these cars, but it's probably some EPA thing, or who knows. Anyway, so there you go. We'll be putting this up in the car after we get the fittings that I had to order from Holley because they didn't come with a kit.